All right, Kevin, back with you again for another episode of Million Dollar Relationships. And today I have my friend Todd with me. Todd, welcome, and thanks so much for taking the time to have this conversation today.
Hey, Kevin, great to see you. Always good to see your smiling face and the energetic side. Always get to follow you on social, seeing you hustle and bustle out there. It's always good to see you. You motivate me, keep me working even harder.
Well, Todd, I'll tell you what, I will say the same for you. In fact, I saw your post this morning about, you still got up and you worked out. Well, yesterday, I think it was yesterday, you put the photo up of being at the pizza place. And this morning, you're like, still got my run and my workout in, had to work off that pizza. And so kudos to you, man. And, I have really been looking forward to this conversation because you and I, we met through our mutual friend, Steve Sims. And last year, I know Steve's been hosting these speakeasies for a while. And I went to one last year and got to meet you at Steve's speakeasy event. And what Steve does is very unique because he never lets anybody know who's going to be there in advance, who the speakers are, but he attracts some pretty awesome people, not only as speakers, but as attendees too. I met some really awesome people at Steve's event, and Steve and I, we go back ways. I actually, the first time I met Steve was at a Genius Network event, one of Joe Polish's events, and him and I were both in that group. And we had gone out to dinner one night, and a group of us, well, the table that everybody was sitting at, there wasn't enough room for all of us. So Steve and I were the only two outstanding. So him and I got a table kind of over in the corner by ourselves. And I will tell you, Todd, that there was plenty of whiskey involved that night. Long story short, he, I was telling him how my wife and I was in strategic coach at the time and getting ready to go to a coach workshop in a couple of weeks in Santa Monica. That's where I would go to strategic. And I was telling him, I said, I'm really excited for this trip because not only am I going to coach, I'm staying through the weekend. And my wife is coming along with me, and her and I get to hang out for the whole weekend and time away from the kids. And Todd, that was a big fat hairy deal for me. I was really excited about this, And he's like, are you guys going to the Oscars and stuff? And I'm like, no. I was like, when is that? And he's like, the same weekend you guys are going to be here, And I'm like, no, I didn't even know about the Oscars. And he's like, you don't want to go to the Oscars. He's like, the place to go is Elton John's Oscar party because you can meet all these celebrities, and it's a philanthropic environment, and so it's a really cool environment and everything. And I'm like, wow. I was like, you can get us into that? And he's like, yeah, I could totally get you into that. And I'm like, well, let me call my wife. And so I called her right then and there, and I was like, hey, you know what? I just met this guy. He could get us into Elton John's Oscar party, and all we got to do is we got to change the flights for one day later, and we could get into the Oscar party. And my wife was like, that sounds pretty awesome. She goes, okay, I'll change our flights. You do whatever you got to do. So I'm handing Steve my credit card, and bless him, he's like, all right, Kev. He's like, I get it. He's like, we've had a few drinks tonight. Let's talk about this again tomorrow. And if you still want to do this, then I'll take your credit card and stuff, And Steve and I have been friends ever since. That was an amazing experience going to that Oscar party. I scored big time points with my wife after that. And so, it was really cool to, go to his speakeasy last year and then meet you. And I don't normally do this kind of stuff on this podcast, but yet when you and I met through a mutual friend, and this whole thing is about relationships, and the value. Relationships are the most valuable asset we possess as entrepreneurs.
No doubt.
And Steve is such a perfect example of that. And because you and I met through our mutual friend, Steve, who we both have so much admiration and respect for, it's just like you and I can connect so easy just because of that alone. And so I just had to share that little bit too, And so yeah, I'm really excited to just, have this conversation with you. So what I'd like to do is just kind of turn over to you a little bit and have you, well, we'll start by setting some context. Share a little bit about what you do, who you serve, what inspires you to do what you do. And we'll just start there and let everybody get to know, who is Todd?
Yeah. Just a final note on Steve's event. I mean, a lot of people ask me, why do you go to an event where you don't know who the speakers are and all of that? And it's for people like you, Kevin. It's the relationships actually in the audience that I enjoy the most when I go to the right mastermind. I don't do a ton of them. I do a couple here and there, but I find the relationships in the crowd, you don't know who you're going to meet. Someone who is a high level CEO of a bunch of different carpet cleaning companies, or whether it be, getting to meet a close friend of Joe Polish or Genius Network folks, or it's just someone who's just trying to make it to the next level, and you're able to guide them and help them. To me, that's exciting, just to, get people in the same room that are on the same wavelength. They're trying to grow. They're always trying to learn. They're humble enough that they'll go to an event like this where they'll open themselves up and stand up in the stage and be silly. Like Steve makes you, gets you uncomfortable. So I think events like Steve's, I think are the fabric, and it's an easy answer for me. It's not about who the speakers are. It's all the friendships. I've garnered up maybe 4 or 5 good relationships that we've grown, and it's not necessarily just out of business, just friendships alone. But there's a lot of potential growth, and some people to bounce ideas back and forth. So you want to find people, you want to find your tribe, you want to people on the same level to be around each other. So that's always nice to first end that. But yeah, just to talk about what I do, what I'm about, and as a company, my wife and I, we lead a bunch of different businesses, but our main passion is modular housing, affordable housing. I think it's the wave of the future. I think that there's a big need. There's a lot of people, especially in California, northern and southern, especially in the high level areas like San Jose, Los Angeles, that that can't afford to buy a single family home. You're talking about $1 million, $2 million houses. You don't know if they'll ever be able to afford to buy a single family home in their lifetime. So being able to do something like affordable housing with modular housing, I think that is something that we provide a service that people need. And it's a great starting block for people to grow. I've had many stories about people who bought their first mobile home, spent 100, 200,000 and grew. And the mobile home went up in value. They were able to get maybe 100,000 in equity. They were able to get the tax write-off. And next thing you know, 5 years later, they have 200,000 or 300,000 of equity that they wouldn't have had if they had not bought the mobile home. And then they bought their single family home. And being part of that excites me. My family, we came from a very poor family. We were on welfare. School lunches were good. I look forward to school lunches. That's our background. And a lot of folks say, Todd, you do luxury real estate. You sell $3-4 million houses, but you get more excited about selling a $100,000 mobile home. That's just weird. I don't get it. I said, you get it if you know who I was. If you knew my background, I get excited about helping people grow and helping them. And I don't feel like I'm selling them a home. I feel like I'm helping them to lay out their future. That person that I talked to you about, one of them, when they bought that house, they're making $20 an hour, $15, $20 an hour. Their kid was making $15, $20 an hour. That person bought a mobile home, bought a single family home. And several years later, they had 500,000 worth of equity. They pulled out to actually buy a restaurant for their son and change the path of their future. Wow. So being a part of that is way more exciting than selling $3 million. Now, the paychecks are great. I can do a lot of good with a paycheck when I sell a $3 million home, which I do. I can give it to, good causes. I'm able to, do my backpacks every year, give away to the kids that are low income. I usually do like 1,000 backpacks every year. But what excites me, and you can almost hear my voice change as I talk about it, I get excited about helping those who are less fortunate that don't know the road to get to that level. And that's why modular housing is something that really excites me.
That is awesome. And that is, I really appreciate you sharing that, Todd, because that is the big distinction that I've found over the years too, that, there's a big difference between entrepreneurs who are focused on adding revenue, growing their business, versus entrepreneurs who are like you, who are focused on, I want to make a bigger impact in this world through my business, through my philanthropic efforts, which you briefly talked on both of those. And when we focused on impact instead of revenue, revenue ends up becoming the byproduct of making a bigger impact. And so the revenue grows as a result of us focusing on impact. And I'll tell you, it is, like you said, we get excited about impact, and people can sense that, and it attracts the right people to us that want to be a part of it, they want to help support us, they want to, and surrounding ourselves with people who are focused on impact, that ain't a bad thing. That is not a bad thing. So, well, I really appreciate you sharing that and just kind of setting some context here. And of course, knowing you, we've never had this conversation before. We only spoke very briefly at Steve's event last year, but like, it doesn't surprise me at all to hear you sharing all that. And it's just like, it's really amazing. It's really amazing. So, okay. So now that we've got a little bit of context set here, we'll shift gears, and I'm going to reiterate the question for the benefit of all the listeners. Todd, have you ever been introduced to a person that completely changed the course of your life or your business, so much so that much of what you have today would not even be possible if not for this person? And I know even I'm a little bit privy here because you and I were talking before the call, but I'm really excited to have you share your story, your experience around this, because I know the impact that's come from this, and we're gonna inspire anybody listening to this as well. So,
Yeah, I mean, I think before we get into that story, I think what's really important was I think how I kind of grew up a little bit, in
okay,
that we were on welfare, and I think the moment that that kind of changed everything was that I was working at a gas station, pumping gas, washing windows, doing full service. I don't know, you might be a little old enough. Maybe a lot of our listeners aren't old enough to know that there's full service, and you had to wipe the windows,
yep, yep,
put air in tires, and then I ended up doing a lot of cleaning toilets growing up. My family was very, very poor. We couldn't afford much. So on the weekends of my high school, I actually, across the street from my high school, I would work on the weekends while all of my friends would come and hang out, and they'd come by and say hi, but they would really laugh at me as I was working, and they were going out to their parties, having a good time. But there was a moment in my career where I sat there and I was like, I was cleaning toilets, and my friends came by, and I kind of looked up, cleaning the toilets, and you would hear the ring. I don't know. Again, these are things that a little bit more in my time, they would make it into the gas station. There'd be this little wire,
yep,
trip the wire, and you'd hear the ding ding.
ding ding. Yep, I
Yeah,
remember that.
and so I would look up from the toilet, and I saw one of my closest friends with this girl that I really liked, and I was holding the brush, and I look up and I see my buddy and the girl that I wanted to go out with, and he was driving this new Ford Mustang, and I was like, oh man, I go, one of these days I want to be him. I want to drive the new Ford Mustang. I don't want to be cleaning toilets. So that day I really told myself, I'm going to dedicate myself to growing. I'm going to get better. I'm going to get out of this job. I'm going to make something of myself. So I think that's kind of a preface to understand like what my background was, to know that I wanted to fight hard to go against it. And my wife has a wonderful story. She came over from Vietnam. I was born in San Jose, California, even though my family was from Vietnam. My wife has a much, much better story than me. She actually was raised by her mom. Her father, went on a boat to the America, but couldn't get her over. And my wife had to support the family, and she actually had to sell balloons on a street in order to make money. Now, she was 6 or 7 years old doing that, and other kids sold balloons also to make money. But my wife, she would try to figure out strategically how to be better than the other kids. So luckily, she was very artistic. So she would actually get leaves from the trees and put it on the balloons to make a design of some sort, so that it would outshine the other kids. So I think my wife is even a better business entrepreneur at age 6 or 7, that she figured it out. So she had to, she actually lied to her parents and said that she was going to school, but she ended up selling these balloons and making money and bringing some money home to the family. So there's some wonderful stories that my business partner and my wife have that we've kind of struggled to overcome a lot. But back to you, getting to your question, with the teacher that taught me the most, a person that's taught me the most and has impacted my life. Actually, my very first transaction when I got into sales and actually going into this business, I actually thought I was going to get into real estate because they told me I was going to be selling homes.
Okay.
But I'm the type that, they told me, hey, you're going to be selling homes. The next day I come in, you have to go get your mobile home license. I go, mobile home license? You told me I was going to be selling homes. Well, a mobile home is a home. I go, no, that's not. It's a thing you drive. They go, no. These are in mobile home communities. And I was like, well, you kind of lied to me, but okay, I shook your hand. I'm the type, I shake someone's hands, that's my bond. I'm gonna stick with it. And sure enough, I got into it. It ended up being mobile homes. Okay. So my very first transaction that I did this, I was selling a mobile home, and honestly, I didn't know what I was doing. My paperwork was all over the place. I tried to, trying to wing it my first time, and I submitted my application to this mobile home community for my buyer. And I got reamed out. I mean, the manager of the community had called the regional out. The regional manager, who I thought only managed one community, came out and said, Todd, you're not doing the paperwork properly. You need to do this. She started yelling at me, screaming at me, telling me how horrible I was and that I needed to improve, that I need to get better. And this is how if I'm going to stay in this business, this is what you got to do. So she was really hard on me. I thought she was a you-know-what, afterwards. But I did it right. I submitted the paperwork properly, and then she actually came out. The park manager's boss came out and said, "You know what, Todd, you did good." And then I was like, "Wow, that was pretty cool." So we actually get a relationship from there. She started mentoring me, teaching me what to do. Little did I know that she actually ran 13 communities in the area. Wow. So she actually ended up, once she got me on course after that first transaction, she started introducing me to the other communities and says, Todd's going to do it right. Give him an opportunity to work in our community. He's going to do good. So that kind of propelled my career in the business. And she made a huge impact. I actually know she's retired today. She does a little bit of consultation, but till today we're good friends, and we go out to dim sum, or we'll go out to lunch together, and we'll share some coffee, and we'll laugh about the time that I could barely afford. I had like a $500 car that every morning I had to pour water in because the water would leak out of the radiator, and I didn't have I didn't have a defrost, so I had to use my hands to wipe the windows, and I had two little speakers, portable speakers, and back then there was a Sony Walkman that I would attach into my Walkman to listen to music in my car. So we would go back and talk about my 77 Datsun B210 with honeycomb rims that looked like a little beetle, and look at where we are today. And it's just kind of fun to remember where you came from, always stay humble, and remember, hey, who's those who have helped you in the past. So.
Absolutely. So what year was it that you and Fran first met, Todd?
It was 1996.
96. So 06 to 16. So that's from today, that's like 26 years ago that you guys met. And so that one person, Fran, she was there on that first deal, kind of reaming you, saying, man, Todd, you're really screwing this all up. But you just stuck with it. You persevered. You figured out, you made enough of an impression on her where she's like, man, you know what? I actually like this guy. I like this guy. And so then you guys end up, doing business together. She had all these other communities, and then she started making introductions for you that allowed you to grow. So what are some things that one or two things that just really stand out in your mind that over the last 26 years have happened as a result of the relationship that you and Fran had, that for a fact they would have never happened if you had not met Fran?
I think number one, I wouldn't have grown as quickly as we did as a company without her. I think obviously she molded me. She made me into, and at the time I didn't know, but at the time there were a lot of people in the business that were, let's just say, unsavory. They did the wrong thing for the consumer. So she saw this as an opportunity to mold someone into someone that she would want doing business in her communities, because there are a lot of people that were stealing people's deposits, they were taking people's money, they were illegally making, double charges on inspection reports, things of that nature, and trying to do and not getting the right type of people into her community. They started off on the wrong foot already, and so she wanted someone who would care and be taken care of in her communities. And so I think just being able to meet some of those managers, her introductions were gold. I mean, you want to look for what you call, there's warm leads, there's cold leads, and then there's no, hot leads. And with her introduction, it immediately became, the leads that I got became hot, where they trusted, loved her already. So therefore, all I had to do was do the right thing, and it just kind of grew from there. But she instilled in me a couple things, such as building the right relationships and keeping my word. It was very, very important. And I remember specifically in one of the communities, one of the park managers, even though she had introduced me, didn't like me. She had a relationship with another realtor. Okay. And I think a big turning point, and she had, thrown my business card in the trash can the first time I met her. I mean, she was not nice, but she had to at least talk to me because Fran had introduced me. And I said, you know what? I'm going to kill her with kindness. I'm going to keep on doing this. And it took about 6 years, but finally on one day, the owner of the community was going to come into the park. And I had promised that one of the mobile homes there, it was going to be weeded. And the person, the landscaper, had repeatedly promised to be there, and they didn't show up. So I was in my suit. I came out and I said, you know what? I know you got to answer to your owner. I'm going to go out and pick the weeds right now. So I'm out in my suit. I'm picking weeds, and she's out there taking photos of me. So at first I thought, oh, she's just, doing it from memory. Turns out she was doing it because she wanted to embarrass me, because, she wanted to, keep the good relationship with the other realtor. And she wanted to share those with other community managers that was part of Fran's group, and to tell them, aha, I got Todd Su, the owner of Advantage Homes, to pick weeds. And he's a big owner, and I got him on his hands and knees in his suit. I think it's hilarious. Isn't this funny, guys? Well, it actually backfired. Yeah. All those community managers thought, wow, I wish I had a realtor in my community that would do the right things, that would keep their word. So instead of that, she ended up helping me to build stronger relationships with all those managers. And soon after, again, karma, I guess, hits. About a year later, the agent that she had a relationship with, took for granted their relationship, and they started messing up. And that's when she kind of realized, hey, Todd's not a good guy. And to today, that same manager is now a good friend of mine. And, we laugh about it. She's, I feel so bad I threw your card in the garbage that first time. But, I thought all, agents were garbage and terrible, except for my person that I used to deal with. But I realized you've never taken us for granted. So we've been friends for the last 15 years. So it's just cool that you get certain instances and things in your life that are turning points. And sometimes you may think it's something that's embarrassing or dirty or whatever it is. But I think it's always important when people aren't watching, doing the right thing. And, sooner or later, good things start to happen if you keep on, putting your nose to the grindstone.
Yeah. Todd, thank you so much for sharing all of that, because, it's been my experience, as it has with you too, that, as entrepreneurs, relationships are the most valuable asset we have. And when we treat people right, when we just simple things, saying please and thank you, doing what we say we're going to do, honoring our word, and nobody's perfect. Sometimes, we make mistakes. Some stuff happens sometimes, but when we just own that, and it's okay. People just appreciate that. And they come to find out who we are, and that we really do place an extremely high value on relationships. And you end up creating I don't know, the reputation is the right word, but people just realize who you are, what you're all about, what you stand for, and they just know that. People in your world know who Todd is and what he stands for. And there's just something to be said for that, because that was the whole goal of this podcast when I started. Was I just wanted to inspire entrepreneurs, founders, and CEOs to place an intentional focus on creating more real, meaningful, rewarding, and profitable relationships in their lives. And I'll tell you, Todd, you delivered in spades today by sharing what you did. So I really appreciate that.
And
For
Kevin,
anybody, yeah, go ahead.
Kevin, one thing real quick. I think one thing I have a lot of entrepreneurs ask me, and they ask me what I am the most proud of. They
Okay.
said, "Well, Todd, you have 13 offices. You're the largest modular housing dealer in California. Is that what you're the most proud of? That you have multiple businesses? You're successful. All that stuff. Is that?" I go, "No. What is the thing that I'm most proud of?" And I want to just share that with you and your listeners a little bit.
Yeah.
And I think your ability to give back to your community is going to be the most important thing. And the ability, the fact that I was able to make the money, and my family, my wife and I were able to make the money to help a family, was actually the most important thing. And I want to share with you that when about 3 years ago, there was 2 10-year-olds and an uncle that died in a fire in a mobile home.
Okay.
And they called us and they said, "Hey, hey, anything you can do to help." So initially I was like, "Hey, you know what? I'll give you some money, and that should be able to help you." Well, my wife and I, we found out that, after losing their 2 10-year-olds and uncle, that they would be homeless afterwards.
Wow.
So my wife and I, we just looked at each other without even speaking. Once we found that out, I kind of just looked at her and I go, "Cindy, what do you think?" And then she shook her head yes. And then I looked at it. So we actually donated a brand new $350,000 new home to this family that lost their home in a fire.
Wow.
And we actually were able to get it fully furnished as well. I mean, that's what we live for, being able to help people to be able to, that's why you make the money. So you can do stuff like that where it makes a difference and impacts people. We could have actually taken that space, put a new home on there and made money actually, but that's not the right way to do it. We said, you know what, let's try to figure out a way to help this family. They've already lost their kids. They don't have a home they can't afford to, what's $10,000 going to do for them? There's nothing. Yeah. So I told my wife, "Hey, I guess you're not going to be able to buy a purse for a while. We're not going to be able to, eat out all the time, but this family is going to have a home." So, yeah. I think your listeners, you get to that point, and maybe now you make those $3 million home sales and you go, that's where I can put my commission to. Maybe I'm not as excited about it, but I'm excited about doing good things for others. So if you're able to make an impact, help others with the money that you do make, that's really what and it's nice to, in my backyard, I was able to do it where I grew up, and just to see them, and they come and see me, they bring me a bottle of wine, once a year, and they still, appreciate it. And I've got tons of referrals. People have, remembered that moment. And in fact, like TV stations ended up calling me. I didn't even know what was happening. I actually hung up on the first one that called me, that told me that they were going to put me on TV. I go, I don't believe you. I'm just going to hang up. But, good things happen, to those.
Yeah. I know in my experience, Todd, just I consider myself, a steward of relationships, of revenue and money as well. And in my experience, the better steward we are, the more we're given to be a steward of, and I just view myself as just kind of this conduit, and because you know what? We ain't leaving this world with none of it, man. and so, just, and it goes back to impact, just being able to make an impact, because you know what? That stuff just makes you feel good. And it makes you want to do more of that, and just show an appreciation for other people. And I'll tell you, that is something that is in short supply. No, there's not a person on this planet that could not use more appreciation, that would not like to have more appreciation. And so, Todd, for anybody listening to this, that's going, man, Kev, I really like that Todd guy. I really like who he is and what he stands for. How can they get more information on just you or some of the stuff you guys are up to? How can they follow up?
Yeah, I mean, we're all over California, and my kids are growing a little bit, so we'll maybe expanding out of the state here shortly. But yeah, you can get me on social media. You can get me on my Facebook, toddsu.com,
Okay.
TO and 2Ds, SU, or you can get me on my website. It's just my name, toddsu.com.
Awesome.
My modular company that my wife and we own, we run together, is Advantage Homes with an S.com.
Okay.
Is our company, but yeah, feel free to reach out. I'm more than happy to help. And yeah, hey, Kevin, keep on doing great stuff. Keep on sharing all these wonderful stories and help others that need to be motivated by others. This is a great thing you're doing. Keep it going. I'm excited to be part of it.
Well, thank you, Todd. It was a pleasure having this conversation with you today. And I know it's going to inspire a lot of other entrepreneurs. So thank you as well.